Good morning. Today on Al-Watan Al-Arabi Amwal Mag, we welcome His Excellency Fernando Igreja, Brazil's ambassador to the UAE. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So, Ambassador, you took your post in the UAE in 2017, and in 2019, President Bolsonaro made a historic visit to the UAE, which was, I believe, the second of a Brazilian president to the UAE. How much has this helped strengthen the relationships, and especially after facing after that in the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, so effectively, I took office here in 2017. It was a very good moment for our relationship. We had just changed ambassadors both in Brazil and here in Abu Dhabi, and we have worked a lot to finalize some agreements that were on the table, especially the agreements on visas. For permitting that both citizens can go from one country to the other without visas. We also signed in 2018 an agreement on to eliminate the double taxation, and also, we signed it in 2019. We negotiated in 1918, but we signed it in 2019. And also another agreement to protect investments, cooperation about investments in both countries. There were also a couple of agreements on cooperation on justice, civil law specifically, and penal law also. So this took us to another level in our relationship. In 2019, we were in another level of our relationship, which allowed us to have this so successful visit of the president in October 2019. And during the visit, we signed another very important document, which was a memorandum of understanding to establish a strategic partnership between Brazil and the UAE. So with those elements on the table and all the progress that we have done in these our bilateral relations, we began 2020 with a lot of plans and perspectives to make it concrete, all this strategic partnership. Then it came COVID and all the crisis, the pandemic, especially in the first semester, which was really very hard to all the world, of course. And we had to reinvent a little this relationship. I mean, you know that diplomacy is something that we do with contact. It's people contact. People have to meet, people have to talk, people have to be together in events. And then we had to reinvent this, but fortunately, our strategic partnership was so, I would say, so well fundamented, so well founded in very good relations that it allowed us to keep during the year of 2020 a lot of high-level contacts and to put ahead our cooperation. And of course, focused on COVID and on the mutual challenges that both countries were facing. So I think that this was the main thing for 2020.
We have also noticed a strengthening in trade and economic partnership, mainly in sectors around sugar, poultry, beef. How do you see, considering these new factors that you just mentioned, developing more these relationships, and what can Brazil offer to, let's say, UAE investors, both sovereign and private?
Okay, so effectively, commercially talking, we have a trade about 2019 was $2.8 billion, our trade flow between Brazil and the UAE. Basically, Brazil exports to the UAE animal protein. I mean, not only meat, but also poultry and other products derived from these products. So, which means that food security is a basis for our relationship. And this was one of the things that during the 2020 was in our agenda. Brazil has demonstrated or has stated to the UAE that we like to be a partner to the UAE to assure food security in the UAE, considering our exportations to this country. So this is, of course, a main issue in our relationship, and it had been developed during this year. And of course, that now we are facing new challenges, and we want not only to keep this position as one of the most important exporters to the UAE of sugar, as you mentioned, and all kind of animal protein to this country. So food security is really one of the main items in our agenda.
There was the political consultation committees that is working with today the current situation. How has this been developing?
Yeah, well, we have been, as I mentioned, we have been too close to the UAE in this during 2020. We had many contacts with our authorities here and our authorities in UAE, in Brazil and UAE. And the main objective is, of course, to through those talks, through those contacts, establish policies in both countries that could help us to face the challenge of COVID. Food security, again, is one of the main issues on this collaboration between the two countries. But not only, we have a very good cooperation in international fora, in multilateral organisms, where our delegations are always in contact and exchanging points of view. Brazil has celebrated the agreement signed by the UAE and Israel. For instance, recognizing Israel for Brazil, it was a very important decision from the UAE, and it goes with our own foreign policy, this defending the Israel and the Palestine state, of course. So there is a political cooperation that goes on in these talks between the two countries.
We've seen also another sector, which is the defense and security sector, and COVID-19 has really highlighted the risk, whether on supply chain, on security, and all these points. And so in terms of defense and security, I believe Brazil exports around close to $200 million to the Middle East, roughly 20% to the UAE. Do you see opportunities for more cooperation on that level in the coming years?
Yes, we have a cooperation on defense agreement signed since 2014, and we have a very good cooperation in this area. This year, in 2020, we have opened our defense attaché office in Abu Dhabi. The UAE has a military attaché in Brasilia since 2019. So we see with very good perspectives the cooperation between our two countries in this issue. As you might know, we have in Dubai, Embraer, which is our aircraft builder company, has an office in Dubai, and Embraer has many contacts in many sectors, not only defense, but also in civil aviation. We had realized that a month ago, I think, yes, by the end of November, 24th of November, if I'm not mistaken, the Brazilian Defense Day for the UAE, which was a gathering by video conference between Brazilian companies on this area and Emirati companies on this area to discuss the opportunities to present themselves. And we are sure that this is a very important area of our cooperation.
If we go back to, because they're all linked, but to food security, Do you see an opportunity for the UAE also to invest in the agro-food business, I would say, in the processing, in the development, rather than just importing cattle or whatever in Brazil? And how would that work? How is that possible?
Of course. I mean, it's very important for us exactly to attract those investments in our food chain in Brazil and production. Well, Brazil have big areas where all those products are come from, but we have some problems with the connections from the producing area to the port, and then there is a large opportunities for investments in Brazil in infrastructure. We are in a process of looking for collaboration more than cooperation between the public, the state and private companies. So we have also had during this year, I think 3 or 4 road shows presenting for foreign investors the possibilities of investing in Brazil in infrastructure area. And I think that this is something where the Emirati companies are very welcome to invest, and investing in infrastructure. Of course, they will be investing in our food production chain and facilitating and guaranteeing the food security for the countries that receive the production from Brazil. So there is a space, there is a lot of space, and I would say especially in infrastructure, and we have been doing this work during this year here.
We've also seen an interest from Brazilian companies that showed a lot of commitment to the UAE. Is it also focused on the food sector as well, and defense, or are there other sectors that you think Brazilian companies would use the region and the UAE as a hub, maybe?
No, we have, of course, on food security, we have some companies working in food here. We have defense, but we have also other Brazilian companies. Yesterday, for instance, I had a meeting with the Brazilian businessman established in the UAE. We had a meeting by video conference, a little to say what had happened in this year. And one of the main Brazilian companies established here is Tramontina. Tramontina is a very traditional industry in Brazil. It is specialized in cutlery, but not only, in all kind of products for the house, for kitchen, for house furnishing. And they are very happy. They are here in the UAE for many years. I think it was the first Brazilian company to come to the UAE, and they had progressed a lot in 2020. And they feel that they have a lot of space, not only in the UAE, of course, but using the UAE as a hub for all the region, for the Middle East and Africa, Central Asia. I mean, so, and we have other companies, Brazilian companies, trying to come and to establish themselves. Many, of course, looking for the opportunities that will come with Expo Dubai next year. So there are. So to answer your question, there are other companies, Brazilian companies established here, and some who are doing very well. I remember also now Marco Polo, which is a company that builds buses and trucks. So it is also established in the UAE, in the region of Dubai, and not only in food security area.
And so I won't take much more of your time. It's maybe on pause now. You mentioned the visa waiver, but how do you expect to pick up within 21 or 22 the tourism development between the two countries?
Yeah, that's something that we have to develop more. There is one of our challenges. We are, myself and the Emirati ambassador in Brasilia, we have been working together on this. Yes, we have some Brazilian tourism coming to the UAE. I would say a lot of tourists coming here, but it needs to be more developed to show what they can do here, what are the opportunities there are in the UAE, and also to try to have the Emiratis doing tourism in Brazil. We have this connection. Before the pandemic, we have 3 flights per day of Emirates connecting Dubai, São Paulo, and Dubai, Rio de Janeiro. Now I think that we have 5 or 4 flights per week. We hope that this will come more and more flights, it will be normalized the situation between. And then it's important to show that you can take a flight here early in the morning and you can sleep in São Paulo, and then you can have all the day or all the week in Brazil. So to show the opportunities for tourism in both countries is one of our main tasks for the next year. And of course, Expo will help a lot attracting people to come here.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. We also hope that coming next year things will smoothen and travel and these exchanges will increase. Thank you for giving us these insights on the relations between Brazil and the UAE.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity.